Hi there, students. For good measure. Okay, this was a request by Peter. So, for good measure means in addition. It means as a bonus. It means as an extra on top of what was required. This is about the extra mile. So, whenever I make the soup, I throw in an extra pinch of salt for good measure. The client didn't argue with me about the price, so I threw in a few extra items for good measure. To throw something in for good measure. The concert was really good. It was really excellent. There were lots of well-known songs, but there were a few new ones for good measure. Additionally. Now, in English, there's a really good phrase, a baker's dozen. And a baker's dozen means 13. Now, in the Middle Ages, there were laws that if a baker sold people bread that was short measure, that wasn't up to the weight. So if he sells you a kilo piece of bread and it's only 900 grams, the baker could be executed for that. It was punishable by death. So the bakers, instead of making 12 pieces of bread, they made 13 for good measure to make sure that they were over the minimum requirement. So, yeah, they put in an extra loaf for good measure. Okay, so for good measure, this is something that is an extra amount. Let's see, whenever I make rice, I allow 50 grams of rice per person and an extra portion of rice for good measure. I'm terrible at mathematics. I can't multiply. I can't even add, she said, for good measure. Okay, so to add something in, to say something more, to go deeper, in excess of the minimum required, to say a little bit more. So I was packing and I wondered if I'd got enough clothes. So I threw in an extra shirt for good measure, to be on the safe side, to make sure that I had enough. Okay, you should put your essay into a plastic folder for good measure because you don't want it to get rained on. Add some more spices to the sauce for good measure. My eyes were a little bit itchy, so I put some eye drops in my eyes, and then I put an extra drop for good measure. So it's just making sure there's enough of something. Yeah, not making sure that it's not short measure. This is about going the extra mile. This is about a bonus. This is about doing something extra. So I checked my calculations and then I checked them again for good measure. She gave me the basic explanation of what happened, and then she added a few more details for good measure. He repeated the answer for good measure, just in case I hadn't heard it clearly. So in addition to what you've already done, in addition to what you've given, in addition to what you've included, I know you phoned them a couple of times and they haven't answered, but phone them one more time for good measure. Then nobody can say that you haven't done your job. When you go, take your passport with you for good measure because they might want it for identification. So take a little bit more money than that for good measure because you just might need some. in addition to the minimum required, as an extra, as good measure, to make sure that it's not short, it is a good measure, a full measure. Formality for good measure. I think I'm going to give this a 4 in formality. This is the sort of thing I would use in an informal conversation. Yeah, and another one for good measure. And yeah, four informality, informal conversation, maybe a semi-formal one. So I repeated my question for good measure in case he hadn't understood it. Something in addition. So, for good measure. Bye for now.